Welcome to the Companion Coach Podcast, everybody. This is my space for honest conversations about healing, human connection, sensuality, and all things spiritual growth. I'm your host, Makayla Davis, a spiritual wellness coach, astrologer, former professional companion, and spiritual CEO of my own soul-led business. I'm here to offer you insight, guidance, and truth from a life lived in deep exploration of the soul and the personal self. This podcast is about the real work of becoming, navigating transformation, unpacking desires, challenging outdated systems, and especially reclaiming your voice and your body as sacred. I'll be sharing teachings rooted in astrology, human design, emotional awareness, and embodiment, along with personal stories and lessons learned from the years in the intimacy industry, coaching clients, and walking my own healing path as a woman in leadership. If you're ready to be more connected to yourself and others, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hey, everybody. So this week, I want to talk to you about a massive transit that we're all going through. That's going to bring up a lot of emotional undercurrents for people. And it's pretty important. It's pretty impactful. And I feel will provide us, hopefully, in our personal lives and on a collective scale, a lot of growth by the time that this transit ends or begins to wrap itself up. So Jupiter entered Cancer on June 9th of this year, 2025, and it's going to spend the next year in Cancer up until June 30th of 2026. We experience Jupiter in Cancer about every 11 and a half to 12 years, because that's how long it takes Jupiter to do a complete cycle around the sun and return to, this specific spot in the sky. And from an astrology perspective, Jupiter is considered exalted in Cancer. So its benefits and energy as a planet is magnified. It is essentially working in a higher vibration and can provide a lot more growth and expansion and abundance in the areas of our life where, if you're looking at your astrology chart where Cancer lands. But I'm going to speak about this as a general landscape because these themes that I'm going to cover are going to apply to everybody, no matter where Cancer and Jupiter is transiting in your particular natal chart. Okay. Of course, I will always encourage you to look up the specific place in your natal chart, but for a general perspective, there's going to be these overarching themes that can apply to every single one of us right now and is being presented at this time and space as a learning a learning opportunity for us, right? So let me talk about what Jupiter represents. Okay, so Jupiter is a planet that will bring us opportunity, expansion, an openness, or perhaps a call towards a willingness to expand ourselves in ways that we can widen our perspective, widen our beliefs, learn something new, experience something new, and do a bit of growth in our life. Okay. We will experience Jupiter after we have an 8th house transit sometimes, where we have this death, rebirth, kind of destruction, disempowerment, re-empowerment journey. And it's often through those difficult times or those difficult situations where after we've done a little bit of the healing, we're coming out the other side and now we have more wisdom, we have more perspective. Maybe we have a different vision than we didn't have before. And having those perspectives and those visions and having those experiences that really give you, an outlook on life that really changes the trajectory of like where your life is headed, right? So If somebody thinks so negatively and pessimistic all the time, they're headed in a very negative and pessimistic life, right? They're not going to attract as many opportunities as somebody who is more lighthearted or, optimistic about life and open to new experiences and not thinking the worst case. That person's going to draw in more positivity, more opportunity for growth, for advancement, and overall just a wider scope of experiences and abundance can manifest, right? So on a very basic level, we look to Jupiter as astrologers for that opportunity, for that juicy place to get that opportunity to get something new, to feel good, right? To fill our cup up with something joyous, exciting. And when it's in Cancer, as we're experiencing now, we could get those opportunities when it comes to where we can nurture ourselves in our life and where we can create a foundation that is full of opportunity, full of abundance, full of emotional security. Okay. Cancer is the archetype. It's a water archetype. Okay. It's a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs means there's an initiation. There's usually a step forward with a cardinal sign. So with Cancer, Jupiter and Cancer, we're being guided to take an opportunity or a step forward. Okay. And Cancer rules over the domain of our family, our ancestors, our community where we live. Okay. Our roots, our foundation of our home, where we find connection, where we seek comfort, safety, and security in life. And overall, when you take all those in, the family dynamics, the lineage, what gives you a sense of nurture, what you feel like you can come home to, what feels like home, what feels like safety and security, all of those things also build the foundation for the identity itself. Okay, so Cancer really represents your inner identity in your astrology chart. And so Jupiter transit in Cancer right now, everybody is getting an opportunity to seize more abundance, more expansion when it comes to A, creating your identity, and B, feeling safe and secure in who you are, in the family relationships that you have or don't have, in the connection to your home, to your roots, to your community, and really building a foundation of relationships that are nurturing to the soul. Now, we pull the lens out for a minute, we obviously can see that the world is in many, many crises, with the war overseas going on and many people not feeling safe and secure within their clans, within their home. And it has to do with where they were born and where they're having to grow up right now, and the identity of the clan or the family that they were brought into, right? The religion, if you will. Jupiter rules over religion, Cancer being the family, right? And in the United States side, obviously there are many, many conflicts going on between groups of people and, us essentially, I don't want to get into politics deeply, right? But the issues with people being in our land or not being in our land, being allowed to be in our land or not, and families getting ripped apart right now. And it's a very stressful time, right? But I'm not going to get into politics because that's not a thing that I like to cover in my domain. But I do want to pull your lens out for you to make the connection of what is already happening with Jupiter going into Cancer, right? And how we can see the positive or the negative magnifications of such an energetic switch that happened for us in the sky. So to bring it back down, all right, to you listening right now, me, my life, your relationships, this does come down to gaining emotional wisdom over the next year when it comes to nurturing your relationships in your immediate field, okay? And healing the family lineages that you can immediately heal, right? Healing the gaps within your relationships where there's been emotional pain or an emotional misunderstanding or two different perspectives, right, that have caused some type of emotional strain. Okay. With Jupiter here, we're always talking about the perspective, the wisdom that we have, and how that can be quite different, okay, apart from other people, right? The opposite of the ruler of Jupiter, I don't want to get too deep into it, but the opposite of the ruler of Jupiter, which would be Sagittarius, is Gemini. And we are getting a transit in early July where Uranus is going to move into Gemini, which is going to magnify the splitting of everybody's opinions, right? But real Jupiter wisdom comes when we can extract the thoughts and the ideas from other people, and we can objectify them and we can look at them from their perspective. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with them, but it does mean that we listen and we give an opportunity for us to listen and for to hear other people's perspectives and their experiences and where they have been, and begin healing the gaps between us and others. Okay. That becomes the tool and the key right now for the next year, is gaining the emotional wisdom that it's going to take to heal the gaps between yourself and other people where there is an emotional disconnect or there is a perspective or opinion disconnect. Okay. And Jupiter is here to magnify that. Jupiter is here to either create more of the awareness that there is a difference so that there can be healing, or it can also create more of an awareness of the difference so that we can move towards the healing more, right? Either way, these things are going to be magnified over the next year, and you're going to see it in your personal life. You know, you're going to see these issues come up where there is a dissonance between you and another person. When we're dealing with the Cancer realm, we are dealing with the people that can basically hurt us the most, right? These are the people that are in our hearts, that leave craters on our hearts, that leave emotional imprints on our souls. And the more gap and the more space that we have with people and connections that we've made that are intimate in our lives, and it's not just sexual intimacy, it is emotional intimacy, right? It's the people that we let into our identity, we let into our world, we let into our home, and that we created these connections with, right? These are the people that can touch us the most, that can make the most impact on us. But when there is a space in between you and another, and our relationship dynamic has not been healed between you and another, that leaves a gap in your soul. It leaves a gap for light and love to come in and flood right out of. And in the Kabbalah, we learn about closing the gaps between us and other people in order to heal ourselves, right? And what we're really getting into in this layer is dealing with the second chakra, which is the sacral chakra, which is all about where we meet the manifestation of relationships in our life, and us also money, right? Money issues, relationship issues, sexual issues get rooted in the sacral chakra. And Jupiter coming in here is going to, in Cancer, is going to vibrate people's sacral chakras and bring awareness and attention to where your relationships might be having gaps right now. Now, that does not mean that if somebody severely hurt you and they're in the past, that you need to call them up and invite them back into your life, right? Or somebody who's hurt you and they're coming back into your life and you really don't want to be friends with this person anymore, right? Or you don't want this relationship with this person anymore, right? It does not mean that you open the floodgates up because, okay, we're learning about healing and we're learning about being compassionate, Makayla, and, we're saying close the gap and so forth. The emotional maturity comes from understanding that you have a right to have your own boundaries and to create those boundaries with other people and to verbalize those boundaries, right? Give them the opportunity to know this is why you have this boundary. This is why you don't want don't want to nurture this relationship anymore. The closing in the gap in those spaces will come from your ability to provide forgiveness for that person. And that forgiveness and that letting go, which can be the toughest thing to do with Jupiter and Cancer, because Cancer has tenacity as a sign. It holds on to things. Cancer has memory. Wherever Cancer is in your chart, whatever planets you have Cancer in, Jupiter moving into Cancer creates all that memory, brings that memory back, holds on to that memory. New experiences will create those memories, right? But much like Cancer's, the crab that is ruled by Cancer lives in the tides, right, of the ocean. We have to also go with the emotions and know that our emotions are never stagnant. They're always fleeting. They will come and go. There is never truth in that emotional moment. We must let the emotion come and go and reach this place of calmness, understanding, emotional detachment, and an ability to grab a wise perspective of the situation. And then we can reach this point where we can have forgiveness or we can let go. And that might take some time for people. That might take this full year. That might just start getting triggered this next year with Jupiter and Cancer. And it might take you 4 years, right? The point is that the maturity through this sign will be understanding the emotional wisdom to have the compassion to forgive, mend, close the gap, let go where necessary when it comes to our closer relationships, our family dynamics, our ancestral loins, right? We're healing many, many processes when we begin to close the gap, not create space anymore between you and another, not I resent you, I hate you, get out of my life, I never want to talk to you again, right? That's anger, that creates space, right? You hurt me, you manipulated me, you stole from me, you make me so angry. I can't stand you anymore. This person is delusional. This person does this to me. This person does that to me, right? We could just go on, but that just creates more wedges and more gaps and more space. My neighbor is such an asshole. They're always taking my parking spot. More space, more gaps, more wedge between you and another human. Then there's resentment. There's that anger. And these things will manifest. Again, Cancer holds that memory. So what type of memory do you want to hold? Do you want to hold a memory of all this pain and hurt and anger and resentment and fear? Because those emotions, if you've ever looked at the work of Dr. Gabriel Mate, Joe Dispenza, these emotions begin to manifest as cancers inside of our bodies. Jupiter provides us an opportunity of a letting go of an old belief, a letting go of an old perspective, an old feeling being in Cancer, and an opportunity to go into a new direction with a belief, a perspective, or a feeling, and one that is more empathetic, one that is more nurturing to yourself and to others, one that has more emotional and spiritual wisdom, and one that can feel more comforting for the soul. So this becomes about soul healing and the path to emotional wisdom, soulful wisdom, spiritual wisdom over the next year. It will bring challenges, this transit. It will bring that Cancer tenacity for you and other people. But do you want to keep on operating from a place of anger and resentment and fear? Or do we want to rest our soul, and do we want to allow our spiritual self and our daily self to resonate in things that feel more nurturing, more safe, more comfortable, more at home with myself, with yourself, and another human being? And when we begin to close the gaps between the discord and our relationships with ourselves and other people, we're healing ourselves. We're understanding that all of these people, all of these relationships in our life are just mirrors back at ourselves. When you get that confrontation with somebody else, when you get that challenge with somebody else, it's an opportunity for you to say, what is that person teaching me about myself? When it comes to relationships in the sacral chakra and this Jupiter and Cancer transit, we're learning to say yes, please, or no, thank you to people in our lives, certain situations in our lives, certain feelings that we're coming up with. Yes, please, no, thank you. Do you want to say, yes, please, I want to be angry and just full of rage every day? Or no, thank you, I don't want to feel that way. And I have the desire to have peace. I have the desire to have forgiveness. I have desire to feel more love, be more connected to the source of love. Every time we step into the anger and the pain and the negative side, we are disconnecting ourselves from our higher self, our vibrational self, love's wisdom, love's gifts. Then we lose out on opportunity. We lose out on different connections. The more we can close the gap between the discord and the relationships with ourselves, the more we're going to learn about ourselves, the more opportunity we're going to have to cultivate the family connections that we want, the relationships that we want. And if we zoom out on a bigger scale, if every single one of us begins doing this work and closing the gaps, we begin to cultivate more nurturing society, more nurturing, accepting, compassionate, loving countries. And eventually, oh my God, I sound like a pageant woman, but world peace, you know? So I hope that gives you some thought today. Because for the next year, we're going to have this Jupiter and Cancer transit, and I'm sure I'm going to bring up more topics around this, because a lot of what I've learned throughout the years is about human connection, of course, right? This is why we are the Companion Coach podcast, because it takes time and it takes wisdom and it takes patience and a willingness to want to have compassion for the other people that we have relationships with in our life, and to have forgiveness for being hurt in our life, and always taking those opportunities of the connections that we have with others as a learning opportunity to know more about ourselves and what we do need to work on and what we need to nurture more, you know, in our relationships, and the reflections that we're getting back at one another. But I do know that when we lean more in to the compassion, to the forgiveness, and we close those gaps, we feel more love, we feel more serenity, we feel more peace, we feel more relaxed, our body gets more relaxed, and we also open up our personal world for more opportunity for love, light, wealth, connection, abundance to come into our spaces. Okay. So everybody, have a fantastic week ahead of you, and I'll be back soon.